Dukes. Welcome YouTube to the best place on earth for D&D, the Geek Live. Today we'll be talking about the second part of the ever expensive Cleric sublist. So Cleric is one of those classes that has a lot of subclasses to it, well into the double digits, much like the Wizard class. So it definitely offers a lot of different variety depending on what you want to do and take with it. So we'll be starting off with the light domain cleric today and keep on chugging along until we hit the war domain. So without and before we start this list off, remember, let's hit that subscribe button and that notification button as well, and don't forget to comment and like below. Without further ado, let's start taking a look at part 2 of these cleric subclasses. So we'll take a look at the light domain cleric first. So this light domain is more so mid to long range type of combatant who really focuses on the fire and the radiant damage with a lot of their spells. They got a lot of nifty types of spells from like Fairy Fire, Scorching Ray, Flaming Sphere, Wall of Fire, and even the ever so popular Fireball and Flame Strike. So the Light Cleric was really doubling down on that blaster mage concept, and a cool feat to pick up for the Light Domain Cleric is definitely the Elemental Adept Fire to really help take away a lot of those resistances to fire damage, which a lot of creatures do have resistance to fire damage. So that's definitely cool. And the light domain cleric also gets a few other nifty little tricks up their sleeve. So for instance, they get something called a Warden Flare feature. So pretty much whenever somebody's attacking them or at later levels on their allies, they can pretty much use their reaction to impose disadvantage on that attack roll, which could very well save somebody's life. So that's pretty cool, but an interesting thing to remember is if that person can't be blinded, then they're not affected by this feature. So that's something to keep in mind, but 9 times out of 10 it's probably gonna affect the creature that you're trying to use it on.
It's a very thematic feature for this subdomain.
Yep. And one of the great things about it is on 17th level they get the Corona of Light, and what that basically says is you can use your action to pretty much activate this for a minute. And basically what it does is it offers a little bit of light, which is good if you're a human, dragonborn, whatever. But the main thing is all enemies within the bright light that you're shedding from yourself has disadvantage on saving throws against any spell that deals fire or radiant damage, which really doubles down on that blasting effect. And based on the wording of it, unless there's a bit of a errata at some point or another in the future, since it says any spell that deals fire or radiant, that doesn't have to come just from you. That can come from your wizard friend or your druid friend or something like that. So if you happen to have a wildfire druid in your party, they take advantage of this as well.
And it turns up the fire and radiant damage to 11 essentially.
Yep. Can you imagine activating this with a amped up fireball or flame strike?
Hey. Who doesn't want a bigger fireball?
Says everybody ever.
Exactly.
So overall, I think the light domain is definitely a pretty good subclass for the cleric, and a very thematic one as well.
Definitely, I would agree there. I think the features that are available in this domain are very thematic with what the domain is about. Light, right? You're improving all of your light and your fire, and you blind people with light to give uh, disadvantage on rolls. So I think it's very thematic and sounds like a lot of fun to play.
Yeah. So now we move on from a very thematic cleric to probably one of the most unthematic cleric subclasses, the nature domain cleric. So, the nature domain cleric is what you take is pretty much what you get when you fuse a cleric with a druid. So the nature domain is all about that nature, those animals, the plants, stuff like that. So they get different domain spells such as speak with animals, spike growth, plant growth, dominate beast, insect plague, stuff like that. That's really doubling down on what nature has to offer, which can have some useful tricks to it depending on the campaign that you're in. One of the biggest best things that I think they get though in terms of general features is on first level they get the acolyte of nature feature. What that basically does was you learn one druid cantrip of your choice and you get proficiency in either animal handling, nature, or survival. So the cool thing about that is you get a druid cantrip of your choice. So one good thing that you potentially pick up is produce flame. So you can actually have a cantrip that is tied to an attack roll instead of a save and throw.
Mm-hmm.
But probably the most popular druid cantrip to pick up though is Shillelagh. So you pick up your quarterstaff from your back from your starting goal, pick up Shillelagh with this, and start going into town with basically just focusing in on your wisdom modifier, which is pretty good, especially if you combine that with like Polearm Master, Sentinel, that type of stuff. And then also, as a nature cleric, you get proficiency with heavy armor, so that's good, especially if you happen to get some mithril armor. So that'll be very useful. You can just say, I got mithril armor. I don't need to worry about the strength requirement anymore. And then of course they get divine strike, which is good. You can add an extra D8 of cold fire or lightning damage onto one attack per turn, which is cool. Really pushes this cleric to pick up Shillelagh.
Definitely.
Yeah. For the most part, that's the big things. The other cool thing is on sixth level they get dampen elements. What that basically means is whenever you or a creature within 30 feet of you takes acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder damage, you can use your resistance to grant that target creature resistance to the affecting what you call it damage type, which can be very cool. You see an enemy upcasting a lightning bolt, have your reaction ready, was that's probably gonna hurt. So overall, it's not bad in the right campaign. I mean, if you're in a very nature campaign, it can be pretty good. It might be better to be a ranger or a druid, but it's a good option.
Yeah, I think there's some utility to this domain. To me personally, it seems like a little bit of an odd um, fit for a cleric. Obviously, I know why that you understand why they did it, right? There are nature gods, and you can be a cleric to a nature god. So from that perspective, it makes sense. But for me personally, all I literally have to do is turn the page in the player's handbook, and I can just play a druid, which more like 75% of the things that you get are druid-based types of spells and abilities anyway with the nature domain. But so it has its places, but I think that if you wanted to go full nature, like you were saying, Nikai, ranger or druid for sure would probably be a better approach if that was what you wanted to focus on.
Yep. So with that, the next thing we're going to head to is coming from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. It's the Order Domain Cleric. Now, it's an interesting take on the cleric, as this cleric really deals with a lot of law and order type of thing. And no, we're
Yes.
not talking about Law and Order SVU.
Dun, dun.
So they get some interesting stuff like Command, Mass Healing Word, Slow, and Dominate Person as some of their better domain spells, which can be pretty good if used correctly. So that's pretty a kind of cool bit of things. Um, Also, they get proficiency in heavy armor as well as either intimidation or persuasion, which is kind of cool. Although being charisma, you might not have the best skill choice for that, but it can be handy, especially if there's not a paladin in the party or something like that.
Very much.
Yeah. So overall, that's not too bad. There's a few other interesting tidbits of things in here. For example, one thing that they get is on first level the voice of authority. Now, what that does is basically whenever you cast a spell with a spell slot of first level or higher that targets an ally with it, that ally can use their reaction to make a weapon attack. Or is it a weapon attack? Yeah, a weapon attack. Now, if it targets more than one ally, like a mass cure wounds, you get to decide which ally can make that reactionary weapon attack, which definitely has its uses. Like you have a big, great weapon fight and barbarian on the party, good choice. You have a paladin or a rogue on the party, good choice, especially for the rogue, considering that their sneak attack only goes off once per turn, which technically is different than once per round, so they can potentially get their sneak attack off twice before their turn comes back around.
Yeah, that if you've got a rogue in your party, this is a very, very powerful ability to be able to use on them, especially as you start climbing those levels and they've got a bigger and bigger sneak attack.
Yep. Like a very interesting thing would be to if somebody like successfully casts like a Tasha's Hideous Laughter or a Whole Person or something like that to force somebody to be prone or stunned or something like that, and then the order domain comes in and it could just be something as simple as a first level healing word on the rogue. Now that's a huge amount of damage just for a small first level spell slot.
Exactly.
And that could be a lot more than what you could easily do with any of your spell slots.
Depending on your level, that is absolutely true.
Yep. So definitely there's a lot of interesting things with that you can potentially do with this subclass. So it's to me it kind of seems like it's a bit of a support type of cleric subclass. It really focuses in on when I do something, when my allies get to do something as well.
Definitely, yeah, definitely has a very support-heavy theme within its features.
Yep. And and probably the first thing that comes to mind in terms of RP for this character is maybe this type of character can be modeled after some like lord or duke, duchess, something like that, climbing the ranks of the government or something like that. Maybe they want to be the king or queen of a plot of land or something like that. This fits perfectly with the order domain, especially if you don't want to be the the paladin that really focuses in on that order as well. So this is kind of like the cleric's version of that.
Yep, it definitely is. One of the uh, one of the other things that I find fascinating about this domain is that it comes directly out of the Magic the Gathering universe and the Ravnica realm, the Ravnica plane, with this being a very Azurius, if you know your color combinations in Magic, uh, blue, white, uh, spells, right? There. I believe I could be mistaken, but I believe that there are um, spells named after some of these features specifically on some of those cards.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
it's a great gateway for people that play Magic that want a little bit of familiarity with something they know to come over into D&D.
Exactly. Because for any of the Magic the Gathering players that might not know, not only is it made by Wizards of the Coast, same company, but there's also a Guide to Ravnica book that has a lot of interesting Magic the Gathering stuff in it.
Yes.
So next up is what I think is probably definitely one of the better cleric subclasses in terms of like optimization and stuff like that. It's the peace domain cleric. Now the peace domain cleric is a little bit of a support class, but it's all about keeping that peace and the like. Um, Maybe not as much as the Oath of Redemption paladin, but it could potentially get up there. So it gets a few cool spells such as Aid, Send In, Greater Restoration, which is always useful to have in your back pocket. I think one of the probably the biggest thing that comes out of the Peace Domain feature list is its Emboldening Bond feature. What that basically means is, as an action, a number of ruling creatures within 30 feet of you, which could include yourself, up to or equal to your proficiency bonus. Um, Basically, you create a magical bond between those target creatures, and whenever a bonded creature is within 30 feet of one another, they get to roll a d4 and add that onto their into attack roll, ability check, or save and throw. They can only add it once per turn, so there's a little caveat to that. But but it's pretty good. It's basically another bless. And while we're on the subject of bless, you can have, um, unless that's changed in the future because of its OPness, you can have both Embolden Bond and Bless up at the same time, since this bond does not use concentration at all.
Yeah, that the ability, just the fact that you can stack Emboldening Bond and Bless makes this feat very powerful.
Yeah. So, like the first thing that comes to my mind is you have like a barbarian, a paladin, or something like that. That's great weapon fighting, or you have like a ranger or something like that. That's sharpshooting. Typically, those two feats say you take a -5 to attack rolls to add a +10 to your damage rolls. Basically, add in a 2d4 onto that. Even if you just take the average of those die rolls, you pretty much negate the -5 attack penalty right then and there on average, with the possibility of even getting a little bit extra attack bonus. So that is huge depending on your party makeup. And since both of them applies to saving throws, especially if you happen to have Warcaster or the Resilience Constitution feat, it's going to be hard to drop your concentration now.
Yes, definitely.
Like, I'm sorry, but to pretty much lose your concentration, you're gonna have to be hit with like 60, 70 plus points of damage in one go to have a chance.
Yep. It's very. It's a lot of damage to have to do.
Yeah. And honestly, if you're starting to get hit by like 80 points of damage in one attack, losing your concentration might not be a thing to be worried about. You might have bigger problems. So that's, I think, is probably the greatest thing of this entire subclass here, and you get it so early on first level too.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And
It's an amazing feature.
and even if you don't want to have this bond and bless up at the same time, this also allows you to pick up a different spell instead of bless if you wanted to.
Right. It definitely allows you to have options, and you're not stuck going down that one road.
Yeah. As amazing as bless is, sometimes you might need a different spell for whatever reason. Maybe you're doing a lot of exploration that where you don't really need bless as much that particular day.
Exactly. And on the topic of fantastic features, the 6th level and the 17th level feature for this domain are also pretty crazy.
They they are. You want to tell the folks about them?
Sure. So at 6th level you get protective bond. Um, you there's no limitation on how many times you can use this, and it allows you to make essentially an unarmed strike against an ally, and pull them pull another ally adjacent to them. It kind of pull them in to say, hey, you take the damage for this guy instead of the wizard or whoever you're trying to protect. Um, it's 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 just a crazy feat, right? You're it's I don't know. It just seems very powerful because if you have a Path of the Totem Warrior barbarian raging, and you're just like, oh, hey, you take half damage. Oh, the wizard is extremely frail. Get over here. They hit them, half damage, and the barbarian still got a ton of hit points.
And the good thing about that is it kind of helps fix that notion of, unlike in video games with D&D, typ- typically there's a GM behind controlling those monsters. So if they wanted to, they could say, yeah, all these monsters are going to go around this tank now because I don't want to deal with that tank. This basically says, oh, you don't want to deal with the tank. I'm going to force you to deal with the tank
Right.
now.
Exactly.
So this is a very good feature if you have somebody in your party really doubling down on that tank of, I want to get big AC, big saving throws, big survivability stuff. This really helps that tank character out.
Yes, it does. And then at 17th level you get expansive bond, which just expands both the emboldening and protective bond, and lets both of those work at 60 feet instead of 30 feet. So even if you're a little bit of your hit points are a little bit low, or you're more on the spellcasting side on with this domain, and you're staying a little bit farther back from the main action, this lets you stay even a little bit further back to protect yourself and still manage the battlefield and save people and boost everybody's attack and saving throws. So just this entire domain just seems very OP.
Yeah, it is. I definitely think it's easily one of the best cleric subclasses by far, in just what it can offer, especially in the right party.
Absolutely.
The the next subclass we're gonna take after is personally one of my favorite cleric subclasses, the Tempest Domain Cleric. Now, the Tempest Domain Cleric is kind of cool because they're all about the thunder and the lightning. Think of things like Thor and other folks like that, which I which I find pretty cool. They get things like Thunder Wave, Shatter, Call Lightning, Ice Storm, Destructive Wave. So a lot of cool little things. And unlike many of the other cleric subclasses, the Tempest domain is all about that melee combat. So they get proficiency with heavy armor and martial weapons. Um, so you're really going to be doubling down on, all right, instead of just instead of me just wanting my wisdom high, now I'm going to want a high strength and a high constitution. So keep that in mind if you want to play the Tempest Domain Cleric. You're going to be a little bit more mad when it comes to your stat array. But you gain a few interesting things. So one of the things you get is your channeled divinity, which is destructive wrath, which is kind of cool. But whenever you roll lightning or thunder damage, you can use one of your channel divinity charges, and you can just say, all right, I'm going to maximize this damage. So let's say you really want to kill somebody, and you upcast your lightning bolt to 5th level, which is a 10d6 points of damage. You can just say, all right, I'm going to use one of my channel divinities, and you're now going to take 60 points of lightning damage off gate.
That's just silly.
Yeah. So it's really cool if you know that somebody's about to fail their saving throw or have some nasty like debuff on them, like a mind sliver or a bane or something like that. Just like, all right, I want you dead, and you're probably going to fail your saving throw. Maximize this lightning bolt, or maximize this chain lightning, or call lightning. I mean,
Yes.
or or even destructive wave, because destructive wave is thunder damage if I'm not mistaken, which is
Oh,
which is some good damage.
oh yeah. That definitely would be.
And a good thing is at higher levels you can use this up to 3 times once you get more channel divinity slots, which is definitely pretty cool.
Very cool.
Um, and some more cool things that you get. So at 17th level you get what is known as Stormborn. So you gain flying speed equal to your current walking speed, which is cool. But at the same time, it is brought down just a little bit because you don't gain the benefit of that flying speed if you're indoors or underground. But in the right location, a flying speed is always good.
Always very good
Yeah.
in the right situation.
As this means in some situations, like the sorcerer or the wizard or something like that, doesn't have to cast fly on you. They could say, "Oh, you can fly. I'm gonna cast like hypnotic pattern instead or something." So that's definitely a cool subclass, really helping double
Yep.
down on that whole concept. Could have probably done a little bit more with the lightning damage stuff, but overall, I think this is a pretty good subclass.
Yeah, I think this is a pretty good domain for the cleric, and very 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 thematic, right? If you want to be able to um, be offensive and do crowd control with with a certain quote unquote element, thunder, lightning. Um, I think there could be a lot of fun to be had with it.
Yep. And while we're on the subject of Thor, let's now talk about his fun-loving brother Loki with our next cleric subclass, the trickery domain subclass. So much like Loki, this subclass is all about the tricks, how you can deceive and trick people into whatever bidding you have for them. So they get a few cool domain spells, such as Charm Person, Disguise Self, Pass Without Trace, Dispel Magic, Dimension Door, Polymorph, Dominate Person. I think it's a really solid spell list. Overall, a lot of good spells are on there.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and they get a few different things. So one thing that they get on first level is Blessing of the Trickster. What that basically does is you can use your action to touch one other willing creature, so not yourself, but somebody else. They have advantage on dexterity stealth checks for 1 hour or until you use it again, which can be very useful. You need to do an infiltration mission,
Yes.
cast this on your rogue. Now they have advantage on their plus 17 stealth checks. And at that point, you're basically going to win that stealth check.
Oh yeah, that there's a very small probability that the rogue is not going to pass that check.
Yep. Uh, Especially if you happen to like not butcher up your own stealth check and be 30 feet away from the rogue with your own pass without trace.
Yep.
So that's kind of cool. And their channel divinity is kind of cool as well. Invoke duplicity.
Yep.
You can pretty much use an action to create a perfect illusion of yourself for up to a minute. And what now the one thing to keep in mind is it does act as you need concentration on this. So bear that in mind. You can't use this and bless or shield of faith or whatever at the same time. So you really need to pick and choose when you do it. But the benefit that you get is that illusion can be within 30 feet of you, and as a bonus action, you can move the illusion up to 30 feet, but it has to remain within 120 feet of yourself. And when that happens, for the duration, you can cast spells either from the spot you're in or your illusion spot. So that's really good. You can send your illusion up to inflict wounds without even endangering yourself.
Yeah, I think that's one of the coolest parts of this domain is being able to have that duplicate, and you can basically have somebody that's in melee range as you stand back. I find that I think it's a really cool a really cool feature for this domain.
Yep, very very cool, and can also be pretty good, especially if you happen to take, let's say, 2 levels of the trickery domain to get this feature, and go take the rest in Divine Soul Sorcerer. Now you
Mm-hmm.
can invoke that duplicity to have a melee illusion within range, and now as a sorcerer, you can quicken and inflict wounds, and then also cast like a shocking grasp as well, all stemming from your duplicity. So you're safe and you're inflicting massive damage with touch spells, which is very cool. And the other cool part about this is whenever you and your illusion are within 5 feet of a creature that can see it, you have advantage on attack rolls against that creature, which is very cool. Like, if you want to do that same inflict wounds type of thing, you can just say, alright, I'm going to slap on some good armor, I'm going to get up there with my illusion, and upcast inflict wounds. Now I
Yep.
have advantage on my attack to really hit hard. Or if you happen to be some sort of elf with this and pick up elven accuracy, now you're rolling 3d20 for that upcasted inflict wounds.
I like this part of the feature because that it gives you advantage because it instills the image of the enemy being confused on which one is it, which one
Yep.
so I like that aspect of this channel divinity.
And there's a lot of cool little nifty combos you can do with this channel divinity as well. And and one of the cool things about this class is on 17th level you get improved duplicity, which whenever you do your channel divinity, um, instead of creating one clone, you can create up to 4 duplicates of yourself, which is amazing. Um, and whenever you, and as a bonus action, you can move any number of them, still within the same restrictions, but that's very cool. Is now you have quadruple the amount of options for where to cast your spell from.
Yep. Yeah.
So it really, so it's a cool little nifty subclass.
Definitely. Great foil for the Tempest domain.
Yep. And then one other, so the next one subclass that we're going to take a look at is the Twilight Domain subclass, which I think is a pretty cool little subclass from the RP role. Kind of get that Twilight vibe from it between the night and the day. And notice you don't have to play this character as I can transform into a werewolf or a vampire. Although you can if you want to.
Only if you really want to.
So some cool things is you do get some spells on your spell list, such as Fairy Fire, which is a good spell, or Vitality, Greater Invisibility, Circle of Power, Mislead. So there's some interesting spells on there. You also get proficiency with martial weapons and heavy armor. So you're kind of like that Tempest domain, that War domain, in terms of you're probably going to be more of the melee combatant than the spellcaster. Um, so also at first level, you have dark vision out to an astounding 300 feet, which is freaking amazing. Like, to my knowledge, nothing else even comes close. I think the next best thing is 120 feet of dark vision, if I'm not mistaken. So this blows out of the water. And you can cut your own dark vision from 300 feet down to share that dark vision with other folks. So if you happen to have a human in the party or a dragonborn or whatever, now you can give them a little bit of your dark vision, so you don't have to give away your position by activating daylight or light or whatever it may be.
Yes.
So it's pretty much like you're getting the goggles of night magic item for free, pretty much. And one of the other cool things that you also happen to get at first level is Vigilant Blessing. So, as an action, you can give one creature you can touch, which can include yourself, advantage on initiative on the next initiative roll, which is very cool. And you can use this as many times as you want, but it can only be active on one creature at a time. So it's like, alright, I'm going to put it on this creature. We have combat. Alright, right after combat, I'm going to cast it again on somebody else. And it's one of those good. And the good thing about it is, it's one of those set it and forget it type of things. As it has no time limit on when it expires. It just lasts until you use it again, or until the next initiative roll is called. And it's very good, but its initiative on advantage on initiative rolls are very popular, very powerful on the right character. You have a tank that you really want to get up there in the thick of things first, put it on that character. You have a rogue that really wants to go in and assassinate somebody because they're an assassin rogue, put it on that. You have a battlefield control wizard or a druid that you really want them to get their hypnotic pattern off of, or their maelstrom or whatever. Give them initiative so they have a much better chance of getting that thing off, so then your fighter can go in and clean up. So it's a very useful feature. So that's definitely pretty good. Um,
Yep.
Another thing is their channel divinity Twilight Sanctuary. It's also pretty good.
It's also very good.
Yep. By popping one of your channel divinity uses, um, pretty much you get a sphere emanating from yourself, um, which is called the Twilight Sanctuary, and which lasts for a minute. And whenever a creature, including yourself, ends its turn within a sphere, you grant a benefit to it, either granting it temp HP equal to D6 plus your cleric level, or you can end one effect on it to be charmed or frightened. Both are pretty useful.
They're both really useful.
Yep. And just to double down on that power, on 17th level, all yourself and all your allies have half cover while inside that sphere. So that's extra plus 2 AC.
Effectively, yes. It's that that just puts the Twilight Sanctuary over the top, in my opinion. And obviously, by the time you get to level 17, you're pretty powerful anyway. But that's giving you and your allies half cover is just crazy.
Like, like a cool thing is, it's going to be great, very great team dynamics if you happen to have this dropped on the field. You move up, to melee range alongside your paladin with their 30-foot aura of protection. Now you're covering AC and saving throws. So,
Yep.
that can be very, very powerful.
Yeah. I definitely think this domain is in the top two or three more powerful domains to take as a cleric for sure.
Yeah,
Seems like a lot of fun to play also with the role playing possibilities of the Twilight sort of uh, stories and things you could wrap around that on why you're so associated to the Twilight. So
yeah. There's definitely a lot of good backstories you can create from that. And then, last but not least, we have the war domain cleric. So think of your Ares and stuff like that. That's all about war and fighting and conflict and stuff like that, which is quite a difference from your peace domain cleric. So I like what they did there.
yes,
So the war domain gets a few good stuff like Shield of Faith, Divine Favor, Spiritual Weapon, Spirit Guardians, Crusader Mantle, Flame Strike, Whole Monster. So that's some some cool domain spells right there. And some of them are ones that you're probably gonna want to pick up anyway. So getting them for free is always good.
yes,
So the war domain automatically starts off with proficiency in heavy armor and martial weapons. So they're really meant to be up in the thick of things like the Twilight and the Tempest domains. Uh, Also, one of the things that they get is um, their channel divinity. One of their channel divinities is guided strike. So what that means is whenever you or at a later level somebody else makes a weapon attack, you can pretty much say, all right, I'm going to give you a +10 to that attack roll, which effectively will turn a miss into a hit unless it's like a natural one type of thing,
right,
which is which can be very, very, very useful, especially for sharpshooter and great weapon master builds.
definitely agree with that.
Yep. Or if you really need your rogue to land that massive sneak attack off. And I think the other big thing that stems from this subclass is the first level War Priest ability, which means up to up to a number of times equal to your Wisdom modifier. Whenever you take the attack action, you can make a weapon attack as a bonus action. So it really doubles down on I'm going to be mainly using my weapon attacks as my primary source of damage. Now, I like the idea of that, but I think it would have been better if the war domain was just given an extra attack altogether.
Definitely.
Because to have a maximum of 5 bonus action attacks per day per long rest, the main reason why I don't think that's that great is because every single cleric, no matter what you do, automatically gets spiritual weapon, which is a bonus action attack, anyways,
Right,
at a cost of a
right,
second level spell. And since you're focusing on an actual weapon attack yourself with like Warhammer or whatever, you're not going to be blowing through your spell slots as much as maybe like a light domain or something like that anyway. So you're going to have the spell slots to use on a spiritual weapon.
right.
So it's like, really? And spiritual weapon doesn't take concentration?
Yeah,
Come on,
I
Wizards of the Coast, just give it extra attack, please.
yeah I think that would be a lot. It would fit a lot. An extra attack would fit really, really well in this domain. It does make me wonder if it would be overpowered. But as we've already talked about a little bit earlier, there are a couple of other domains that are very overpowered too.
Yeah,
But I agree with you that it would fit a lot better than the the bonus action of being able to make another attack with the War Priest feat. So
And plus, I think it's like you said, it's so much more thematic for the war domain to have a second attack.
absolutely.
And yeah, would it make it better? Yeah. Would it make it super OP? Not really. I don't think so. Because I mean, you're just bringing it up to the level of every other character, anyways. Because all your rangers, fighters, paladins, and whatnot already get 2 attacks minimum. So what's the hurt in having this one cleric subclass get an extra attack?
No, and I think that's a valid argument, right? I mean, there's probably people out there that have play tested this and know whether or not uh, how good it is or how fair it is or how bad it might be. But not having play tested, I'm just making a uh, educated guess here. So,
Yeah, and I think the other thing that probably wouldn't make it super overpowered is divine strike ability on 8th level. That only takes effect on once per turn. So I mean, you it wouldn't it wouldn't affect both attacks anyway. So I mean, so it wouldn't be
so it could be
super.
very fair.
Yeah. Now, if divine strike said on each of your attacks, all right, maybe I could see why. But being that it's only once per one attack, there's no harm in giving this subclass an extra attack.
Yeah.
What's the worst that can happen? An extra D4 if you cast Divine Favor.
All right.
But
I guess an extra D4 is not that much, but still.
yeah. But that's for the future when we take a deep dive on each of the classes. But overall, the war domain can be pretty fun, especially if you're all about that combat type of thing, and you don't want to play a fighter or a barbarian or something like that.
Yep.
So overall, I think the cleric has a lot of good stuff in its disposal. I think it has something for almost everybody.
I definitely agree with that. It's a good mixture of some of the other classes, so you can get a feel for them, all the while playing a single class. So
Yeah,
I like that about the cleric.
yeah, yeah. And overall, the cleric's a easy class to pick up for beginners and newbies at the game. There's not a whole lot of things to keep track of and whatnot, unlike some of the other classes within the game of D&D. So it's very user friendly.
Yes.
Yeah. And you can definitely have some fun with the cleric as well. And with with that, we'll bring the crusade to close. Um, but before anybody flames it, yes, I know the paladins could quite potentially be a better crusades, but war domain clerics, they can be a part of the crusade. So with that, next time we'll be taking a look at the druid class and seeing what some of our nature lover boys have to say about things, and we'll see what they have to say about global warming as well.
Yeah.
And until then, folks, keep your life geeky.
Bye, everyone.